Greetings to all y'all in the name of Jah Rastafari and the Most High and His Son Yahshua Messiah, Jesus Christos. Alright, so this is the beginning of a war. It's not the beginning of the war, but it's a war against Rastafari. Systemic corruption spread through traditionally eugenicist-based institutions, hospitals, governments, and the like that work for the Dragon Network, which is a eugenicist-based so-called philanthropy and parliaments and governments and institutions. This video is directly involving the University of Iowa Hospital in Iowa City, Iowa. So this is, for those who don't know, I was on YouTube for about 5 years and I've been censored into oblivion. Over 800 videos censored, and then when you count all the comments and shadow banning and the blocking me in live chats of other channels, like the censorship goes up through 2,000 or 3,000 instances where I was censored. And so was my wife. So at the beginning of COVID, a lot of stress started to build up upon my wife and I, and we had betrayal from our own friends, and all kinds of wicked things happened to us. But it caused my wife to go without sleep and to endure a great deal of stress. And anybody from any race, color, or creed without sleep and insane amounts of stress can crack, as in their mind can crack. And that's what happened to my wife. And I waited 5 days and prayed for 5 days and tried to take care of her myself to bring her back to homeostasis and get her to go to sleep. But I didn't have the tools I needed because I had to babysit her basically, and I couldn't even do my work. So I called family, friends, everybody I knew to try to get some help without having to take her to the hospital, because the hospital is a scary place to be and it's evil and so forth. But I could not get any help. And somebody may very well have dosed my wife without my knowledge with psychedelics that are incredibly powerful, because I don't know how this happened, but from the best of my knowledge, it was caused by stress and sleeplessness. And anybody who goes without sleep can lose their mind. Some people are more resistant to it than others, but a lot of times it gets labeled as psychosis when it's really just temporary psychosis because of sleeplessness. It's not because the person is actually mentally ill. So this is the preface to the circumstance, and there's a lot more details than that, but I'm just trying to lay it out here, because the University of Iowa Hospital in Iowa City, Iowa, UIHC, funded by Rockefellers from the 1920s forward, or there was a one-time endowment at least from the Rockefeller Institution to this hospital. I ended up taking her to that hospital, and I spent an hour explaining our religion, which is Rastafari Orthodox. And I had very long dreads when I went in there, and just so you guys can have the context, I explained our religion. I said I don't want pharmaceuticals. I asked for herbal accommodation. It was not granted. And so I said, under duress and reluctance, that, you're not to give her any injections, you're not to give her any powerful antipsychotics, you're not to give her SSRIs, and most importantly, you're not to give her any injections of any kind, whether it's a COVID vaccine or it's psych meds. And I'm educated enough to know that 99% of those psych meds are poisonous, toxic, put holes in the brain, destroy the brain literally. So that's why I based my request like this. I said the only thing I will bend on as far as pharmakia goes, as far as you giving my wife any sort of big pharma, is that you give her a Xanax or a Klonopin one time, an acute oral dose, whether it's crushed up in her food or it's just given to her under her tongue, and to induce sleep and elation which elation is relief from stress. Okay. So I spent an hour explaining these things to these doctors and nurses, and that there was to be no injections based on our religion so that they should accommodate to our religion. And I also expressed how much mistrust I have in mainstream hospitals and medical institutions, and that I was reluctant to bring her there. And, that if they respected my religious requests, I would be very happy, with the circumstance. But they did the exact opposite. They didn't give her any one-time dose Klonopin or Xanax to induce sleep and elation. They didn't have any herbs to accommodate Rastafari or any other religion that needs herbs versus Big Pharma. And now she has seizures because they blasted her off with the most dangerous psychopharmacological drug that they could possibly give her, named Zyprexa is the brand name, and the chemical name is olanzapine. It's a thiabenzodiazepine class, which is like regular benzodiazepines don't even hold a candle up to that class, because like a Xanax or a Klonopin doesn't put holes in your brain, and it doesn't cause permanent damage from one-time use. And they injected her with it, and they gave her well over the FDA recommended amount. So we have a religious discrimination case and a malpractice case in the same case. Okay. There was a lot of violations. They didn't let me see her for 4 days, and they didn't tell me the correct reason why I couldn't see her. They said they had her on a 48-hour mental health hold, but 48 hours is only 2 days. But I wasn't allowed to see her or talk to her for 4 days. For all my wife knew, I just dropped her there and just left. Okay. The minute I left the hospital, they blasted her off in the hip area with olanzapine, which in that area increases the blood serum levels to dangerous levels. And now my wife has seizures because of that olanzapine injection, among with the other injections they gave her. They didn't heed my requests at all. And what's funny is that the head psychiatrist ended up admitting to me that my diagnosis of my wife was correct, that she had temporary psychosis based on sleeplessness and stress, extreme stress. Because when COVID happened, our financial situation just went downhill, because it's a long story and I don't need to explain it all, but that was building the stress, and we were losing everything, and people were betraying us because of the pressure of the whole COVID thing. And so the deal is we filed through an Iowa Civil Rights Commission to litigate for religious discrimination and failure to accommodate. So here's the thing is, hospitals refuse to carry an apothecary circumstance, like carrying herbs and things for alternatives and less harmful means to give relief, because you can't patent plants. So there's no profit in it for Big Pharma. And from 1937 forward, since cannabis was made illegal, they'd gotten rid of all the herbs, because before 1937, the whole United States official pharmacopoeia was all plants and animal products. Okay, and 40% of that was cannabis. 40%. So there's no excuse with the empirical data and the scientific data on these certain herbs that they shouldn't have that. So that's a failure to accommodate. And they totally denied my religious requests and did not do the least harm they could do as far as the oath of a doctor, the Hippocratic Oath. So I suggest that anybody that lives in Iowa should boycott the University of Iowa Hospital, because they don't have any respect for Rastafari or any kind of Abrahamic religion that doesn't want to take pharmaceuticals. They have no accommodations for you. The best accommodation that they have, which we don't do, is yoga, because we don't believe in yoga, because it's invoking pagan gods when you do those yogic stretches. Okay. So they have accommodation for Eastern mysticism, but they don't have accommodation for Rastafari, Abrahamic, Christian faiths, Hebrew roots or whatever, any kind of form of that faith. Torah observant Christians or whatever. Okay. So this is systemic corruption to the point of malicious discrimination, because Rastafari have been being discriminated against by all institutions, especially those that are funded by colonialist eugenicist powers like Rockefeller, Rothschild, Carnegie, all big pharma, the hospitals. Rastafari have been put in mental institutions because we believe what we believe, which is textbook discrimination. Okay. Also, at this hospital, Katie, my wife, I'm not going to say her last name, but my name is Jonathan Cottrell on YouTube. My real name is Oriah. Okay. I'm pretty clear about that multiple times. Jonathan Cottrell is just my YouTube name. But my wife hadn't smoked cannabis for 5 days prior to entering the hospital. And because I was honest with the doctors on intake, I said she had cannabis in her system, because we use cannabis because we're Rastafari and we use it as a medicine and a sacrament. And there was a premature diagnosis of sunstance, which is also called cannabis-induced psychosis. So that is belittling the very faith of Rastafari and what we claim. It was just an attack on us. So to immediately assume that cannabis is the cause of what happened to her, rather than the facts, which was stress-induced sleeplessness, insomnia-induced psychosis, they just went ahead and said, oh, she's just twisted on cannabis. That is discrimination. Immediately. That is just proof positive it's discrimination, because the doctor came to me later and said that my diagnosis, as in me, as in the husband, was more correct than theirs. He said that my diagnosis, because I told him immediately when I took her into the hospital, this is stress and insomnia induced psychosis. Okay. And they went ahead and just said it was cannabis. Tell me that's not hateful and just belittling to the entire body of Rastafari to suggest that whatsoever. Okay. So that's what this video is for. I am going after them because the Iowa Civil Rights Commission has evidently been paid off or pressured to drop our case. So now we have to get a lawyer pro bono, because we can't afford to pay a lawyer. We have to find a lawyer that will accept our case and fight for our civil rights, as well as the malpractice issue, because they gave her this drug against our concession, against our consent, injection style, which we said no needles, no injections, period. And this drug has damaged my wife's brain, which is why I haven't been making as many videos as I usually do, because I've been dealing with that and having to work a full-time job because my wife cannot work. She straight up cannot hold a job because she falls apart because of the damage that's been done. And she has to take 400 or 500 milligrams of CBD some days, usually between 250 and 300, but on bad days she has to take 400 or 500 milligrams of CBD and smoke like a champ to prevent seizure and insanely drastic mood swings that are followed by seizure. Okay. My wife is incapable of being who she once was because of this hospital's indiscretion and malicious discrimination against our faith. They did not take anything I said seriously. And I will continue to make videos exposing the University of Iowa Hospital without fail. I will go after you, and I am coming after you with a lawyer. And I don't mean with violence. I'm talking about litigation. So don't twist my words up. And I'm also going to have litigation against the Iowa Civil Rights Commission for partiality towards the hospital, in favor of the hospital, to drop our case, because evidently, because we're poking at the head of the dragon by calling psychiatry eugenics founded. Eugenics is the founding of psychiatry, as in psychiatry comes from the so-called science of eugenics. There is no scientific backing to the psychiatry at all. They just experiment on people and say you're crazy. And historically, Psychiatry has been used to squander and crush dissent and those who think the way that we're not allowed to think according to the status quo. This is textbook discrimination. This is a huge case that will change hospitals forever, okay? So I'm tired, I'm broken down, and after I see, this just happened with the Iowa Civil Rights Commission, because we've been on this case for almost 2 years now, that they basically didn't even read our citations. They did not read our rebuttals, which were very long. It was like a lawyer wrote these rebuttals, which would be me and my wife, because we're studied in law and we know our rights. But because it will change the very nature of hospitals and medical care as we know it, from a eugenicist, allopathic-based sense into a herbal accommodation, non-patentable plant-based sense, as well as change the dynamic of how Rastafari are treated by these mainstream institutions. And that is a threat to the New World Order dragon system. Okay? So, it is a huge case. It will pave the way for Rastafari. First of all, Rastafari just won in 2022 the right to possess, grow, and have cannabis. Okay? To smoke it, eat it, grow it, have it. Okay? Period. That was a case out of Wisconsin. It was by some white Rastafari brothers, and I think there was some couple black Rastafari brothers involved. And see, that shows you right there. Rastafari is not partial. Okay? Whites, blacks, Asians, Native Americans, Arabs, and indigenous. Black, white, Asian, Native American, Arab, and indigenous Rastafari. Okay? All over the world. We are welcome to be part of the faith, no matter what your race is. And the most educated and upright of all Rastafari will agree.